Sorry. The mic, there's something wrong with the mic here. Has some static. Okay, so let's start over again. Again, it's October 23rd, 2024. The time now is 11:14 a.m. Eastern Time. Yesterday we were talking about the changing images of man, or the changing the image of man. This was a Stanford research report study that was done by the director Willis Harman in 1974. It's a 301-page report that was authored by 14 researchers and supervised by quote unquote 23 controllers. This included anthropologist Margaret Mead and behaviorist B.F. Skinner. And then you had Sir Godfrey or Geoffrey Vickers of the British Armaments and the British Intelligence. So the basic point of the study was the same old news regarding mind control in the New World Order. It's the self-image of mankind and how it must change from the industrial growth to spiritual values. According to the study, many of our present images appear to have come or become dangerously obsolescent. And an image may be appropriate for one phase in the development of a society. But once that stage is completed or accomplished, the use of that image as a continuing guide to action will likely create more problems than it solves. So science, technology, and economics have been made possible really by the strides towards achieving such basic human goals as physical safety and security. Also material comfort and better health. But many of these successes have brought with them problems of being too successful, problems that themselves seem insoluble within the set of societal value premises. Our highly developed system of technology leads to higher vulnerability and breakdowns. Indeed, the range and interconnected impact of societal problems that are now emerging pose a serious threat to our civilization. If our projections of the future prove correct, we can expect the associated problems of the trend to become more serious, more universal, and to occur more rapidly. According to the Stanford study, the images and fundamental conceptions of human nature and potentialities can have enormous power in shaping the values and actions in a society. We have attempted in this study to 1. Illuminate ways our society and its citizens and the institutions have been shaped by the underlying myths and images of the past and present. 2. We explore, with respect to contemporary societal problems, the deficiencies of currently held images of mankind and to identify needed characteristics of future images. 3. We identify high leverage activities that could facilitate the emergence of new images and new policy approaches to the resolution of key problems in society. So this is interesting that they state this in this study in 1974. So basically, the man of the past, the brute force man's man or mankind is no longer needed. That's what it seems like to me that they're stating in this study. They are pushing us, or they were pushing us towards spiritual man, whatever that means. Because it seems like they're not taking us to a more empathetic man. They're actually trying to transform us into a cybernetic man. Sorry guys, hold on. So it continues. I believe that dumping LSD on the populace of the planet was seen as one of those high level or high leverage activities. It was a way of turning the masses away from apolitical activism that might net them a share of the world pie and toward the life of ecstatic mystic peasantry. The Tavistock Institute originated, and the CIA funded Rand Corporation even sponsored the studies, reporting on the quote unquote changes in dogmatism and the political motivation of LSD users. According to one report that was authored by Rand's William McCluhan, he states that if some of the subjects are drawn from extreme right wing or left wing organizations, it may be possible to obtain additional behavioral measures in terms of the number resigning or becoming inactive. So the whole point is for them dumping LSD upon the populations of the world is to make the citizens or the peasants, as they see us, non-political. They want us to basically remove ourselves from the political, uh, I guess, activity, whatever that is. So they want to make sure that we don't contribute in politics or do anything to better ourselves. So they continue on saying another group that closely tracked the flower generation was the Hudson Institute, which was founded by Herman Kahn, who had received funding from the Human Ecology Fund at the CIA cutout. Kahn visited Millbrook and other centers of psychedelic activity, although he was far from an advocate of the benefits of LSD. This is what he stated. He was primarily interested in social control. It should be noted that some of the Tavistock Institute sponsored creators of the LSD culture, men like Tim Leary, may have felt that their motives were benign. LSD users tend to develop a messiah complex in which they see LSD as the solution to all the world's problems and try to turn everyone onto the drug. But the strategic underpinnings of those motives lay in the New World Order plans. And these are the plans of the British elite. Leary and his court were either witting or unwitting agents of the Tavistock Institute. Although the mass media vocally decried the idea that there could ever be a conspiracy of control that was functioning behind the scenes in society, the real members of the conspiracy are often quite straightforward in saying what is going on. Marilyn Ferguson, a protege of Willis Harman, who derived her book, The Aquarian Conspiracy, from Harman's changing images, talked about how the Tavistock Institute was reconstructing the world that would take place. She called it the spin principle, which is segmented, polycentric, integrated networks. Although she suggested that the idea is new, it is obvious that it has been the approach of the New World Order since its inception or the beginning. This is a source of power never before tapped into history. Multiple self-sufficient social movements linked for a whole array of goals, whose accomplishment would transform every aspect of temporary and contemporary life. Because the quote unquote spins are so qualitatively different in organization and impact the bureaucracies, most people don't see them or think they are conspiracies. Often the networks take similar actions without conferring with each other, simply because they share the same assumptions. It might also be said that the shared assumptions are the collusion. And this is what they're stating. The Aquarian conspiracy is, in effect, a spin of spins. This is a network of many networks that is aimed at social transformation. The Aquarian conspiracy is indeed loose, segmented, evolutionary, and redundant. Its center is everywhere. Although many social movements and mutual help groups are represented in its alliances, its life does not hinge on any of them. The upshot of the Tavistock Institute approach and where its spin of spins is heading is obvious. While a tiny percentage of the population will continue to exist within their plush Xanadu's, the majority of the world will be reduced to subsistence standards, basically peasant living, and they will be denied the benefits of technology, industry, although furnished with all the drugs they desire. Then they talk about the center of violence. The dialectic at work create violence through economic pressures. They create violence through the media. They create violence through mind control and agent provocateurs. This is the thesis. Counter it with totalitarian measures, more mind control, more police crackdown, more surveillance, more drugging of the population. This is the antithesis. What ensues is Orwell's vision of 1984, a society of total control. The synthesis: during the Nixon presidency, agents of the Law Enforcement Assistance Administration, an arm of the United States Justice Department, had a roundtable with Richard Nixon and the Attorney General John Mitchell. They also got together with H.R. Haldeman, John Ehrlichman, and other members of the White House staff, as well as Dr. Bertram Brown, the director of the National Institute of Mental Health. Among other programs that the LEAA had evolved were the development of the National Population Surveillance Computer System. This was designed to monitor citizens of the United States, as well as measures to create a national police force, including Operation Cable Splicer and Operation Garden Plot. At the meeting, bonds were forged for the linkage of the LEAA funding, the police state goals, and the NIMH. The LEAA henceforth provided the euphemistically called projects that were funded, the projects were funded and were dozens of mind control and behavior modification programs, and these were done in the hospitals, in the prisons, and in the schools. These projects included the Department of Health, the Department of Education, the Department of Welfare programs, and this was to screen all children on Medicaid for psychological problems. The programs to treat prison inmates with psychoactive drugs and give them shock treatment for child molesters at the Somers Correctional Facility in Connecticut. They also had psychosurgery programs on inmates in Michigan and California, and they did the testing of vomiting-inducing drugs on prisoners who broke rules in Iowa. They also provided the injection of the terror drug Enactine on prisoners in California. The bond between the LEAA and the NIMH reportedly was so tight that eventually the scientists of the NIMH were under the direct control of the LEAA. Eventually, this collaboration changed the character of the LEA, so that the organization was no longer fixated on martial law measures, but primarily involved mind control, and in the mind-controlled funding for aversion therapy. This was also for psychosurgery and behavior control through drugging. In November of 1974, the United States Senate Subcommittee on Constitutional Rights, whose members was Congressman Leo Ryan, who was murdered at Jonestown. This is very interesting. Again, a lot of people believe that Jonestown was a CIA operation. So he was murdered at Jonestown and began an investigation into the federal funding of behavior modification programs. Senator Sam Erwin, who headed the subcommittee, interrogated Donald E. Santarelli, the head of the LEAA, about the kind of projects that were being funded, resulting in an announcement by the organization that they would discontinue providing cash for psychosurgery and other forms of mind control. Not that the pledge was heeded, at least 537 mind control programs, including operations involving psychosurgery, continued to be funded. The LEAA was still in business in mind control when Dr. Louis Joylin, or Jolly West, which was the chairman of the Department of Psychiatry at the University of California and the director of Neuropsychiatric Institute, proposed to California Governor Ronald Reagan the creation of a Center for Study and Reduction of Violence. So basically, all these associations, all these centers that we hear about all the time getting all this funding, they were all mind controlled organizations and behavior modification organizations. It's so crazy. So the original idea for the violence research centers was birthed in the mind of the CIA and FBI agent William Herman. He was employed by the Systems Development Corporation, which was a counterinsurgency advisor to Governor Reagan. Herman had worked at the Rand Corporation, the Hoover Center on Violence, and the Stanford Research Institute. It's all the same guys. During the Vietnam War, Herman had worked as PSYOPs in Vietnam and Cambodia, probably as a member of the Operation Phoenix assassination program. He was responsible for the death of thousands of Vietnamese. Herman has also been identified as an international arms dealer who traded with Iran in 1980 and who may have been involved in the October surprise. In 1995, Herman was serving an 8-year prison sentence in England for an alleged CIA counterfeiting operation. His MO, in short, reads as if he is a member of the Octopus, he was delineated by the murdered journalist Danny Casolaro. And then I think Danny Casolaro was also the one that exposed the software, what was it? Promise? Was it Promise, I think, was the software that he exposed? So in 1970, Herman is reported to have acted as control agent to Colston Westbrook, which was a black CIA psychological warfare expert who had been involved in Operation Phoenix, and quite a coincidence at that. The Viet Cong POWs are known to have been implanted with electronic transceivers during Operation Phoenix. So this is where the mind-controlled microchip comes into play. Again, Vietnam. So Westbrook had formed the Black Cultural Association at Vacaville Medical Facility, the prison in California that was the site of a maximum psychiatric diagnostic unit that was termed a maxi in prison, where extensive drug behavior modification research had been done. It is alleged that there was a mind control assassination program at Vacaville, where men were programmed to murder prominent blacks, including Oakland School Superintendent Marcus Foster and Black Panthers Huey Newton and Bobby Seale. Donald DeFreeze, who between 1967 and 1969 had been employed by the LA Police Department in the Public Disorder Unit, was the black organizer for the Black Cultural Association at Vacaville. Westbrook was the man who dubbed DeFreeze Cinque Metume, meaning the fifth prophet, and who designed the seven-headed cobra logo for the group that Cinque later headed up, the Symbionese Liberation Army. Another Phoenix program alum who backed the Violence Center in a big way was Dr. Earl Bryan. He was a Secretary of Health under Governor Reagan. Now, Bryan was involved in the October surprise, which was the illegalities and murders at the Coba Zone Indian Reservation in California. and he was involved in the theft of the Inslaw Promise software. So yeah, it was Casolero, the Inslaw Promise software, and was identified as a member of the quote unquote octopus in the international crime cabal. This is who murdered journalist Danny Cosolaro. The head of the Violence Control Center would be Louis Joylan West. West's background in the mind control related research goes back to the days of MKUltra. In a CIA memorandum entitled, quote, Interrogation Techniques from January 14th, 1953, it includes the following note. If the services of Major Louis J. West from the USAF, a trained hypnotist, can be obtained, and another man well grounded in conventional psychological interrogation and polygraph techniques, and the services of Lieutenant Colonel redacted, a well balanced interrogation research center could be established in an especially selected location. Now, Aldous Huxley, writing in 1957, also mentioned West. He indicated that he had been doing research with hypnosis and mescaline. In 1961, Huxley commented that West had been experimenting with sense deprivation and noted his state of the art research facilities. West is also known to have directed a CIA funded LSD research program in the 1960s at the University of Oklahoma, and to have run a safe house of unsuspected or specified function in Hashbury at the height of the hippie scene. West was a psychiatrist who examined Jack Ruby, the assassin of Lee Harvey Oswald, ordering that Ruby be treated for mental problems, quite possibly as a means to shut Ruby up in his claims that a conspiracy was responsible for the assassination of JF Kennedy. Sorry about that. I was turning the AC on. So as you can see here, all these people are involved in mind control, creating Manchurian candidates, the CIA, the DOD, the Pentagon. They're all involved in the same thing. They're involved in creating all the institutions, funding the hospitals so they can do these operations, and flooding the populations with pharmaceuticals and actual street drugs. It's insane how this has been allowed to happen. Really crazy. So let me repeat this part again. So West is also known as to have been directed by the CIA-funded LSD research program in the 1960s. He did this at the University of Oklahoma. So all the universities were involved. This is another crazy thing. Again, we wonder why the students at the university are acting the way they're acting, have the ideologies that they have, are responding in the way that they're responding. It's because of the mind control, the education, the materials, the brainwashing. And this is why I tell people you need to hit at the place of power, not at the people that are being controlled. They have no idea that they're being controlled. The majority of them don't. The students don't know, even the professors, unless they're themselves mind controlled, don't realize that they've been duped and used and manipulated, and that the ideology does not come from the common person. It comes from well-organized institutions that are funded by well-organized organizations. So West was a psychiatrist who examined Jack Ruby, the assassin of Lee Harvey Oswald, ordering that Ruby be treated for mental problems, quite possibly as a means to shut Jack Ruby up, and his claims that the conspiracy was responsible for killing John F. Kennedy. West was involved recently in the quote unquote remote viewing experiment of Project Grill Flame, conducted by Stanford Research Institute. Due to a certain amount of notoriety, one suspects the man is currently going by the name of L.J. West and can be seen acting as a hired gun promoting the government line on occasional television news programs. And that's another thing. These people use different names. Like they'll switch their names around, their first name, their middle name, and keep their last name. Or they'll keep their first name and then they'll be, pushed in front of the TV on your CNN, on your MSNBC, on your NBC as experts. So he's going by LJ West and can be seen acting as a hired gun promoting the government line on occasional television news programs. After the announcement of the plans for the Violence Center, West dashed out a letter to then California Director of Health, J.M. Stubblebine. It said, "Dear Stub, I am in possession of a confidential information that the Army is prepared to turn over Nike missile bases to the state and local agencies for non-military purposes. They may look with special favor on health-related applications. Such a Nike missile base is located in Santa Monica Mountains, within a half-hour drive of the Neuropsychiatric Institute. It is accessible but relatively remote. The site is securely fenced and includes various buildings and improvements, making it suitable for prompt occupancy. If this site were made available to the Neuropsychiatric Institute as a research facility, perhaps initially as an adjunct to the new Center for Prevention of Violence, we could put it to very good use. Comparative studies could be carried out in an isolated but convenient location of experimental model programs for the alteration of undesirable behavior. Such programs might include drug, alcohol, or alcohol abuse, modification of chronic antisocial or impulsive aggressiveness, and so on. The site could also accommodate conferences or retreats for instruction of selected groups of mental health, law enforcement personnel, parole officers, special educators, for whom both demonstration and participation would be effective modes of instruction. So that's another thing. So they're talking about using a mind control location to train mental health officials, professionals, law enforcement personnel, parole officers, quote unquote special educators in these techniques. He continues, my understanding is that a direct request by the governor or other appropriate officers of the state to the Secretary of Defense or the President could be most likely to produce prompt results. Among the programs that West foresaw as taking place at the Violence Center were genetics, neurophysiology, biochemical studies of violent persons, studies on so-called hyperkinetic, hyperactive children, or hormonal aspects of passivity, also aggressiveness in boys, and some surveys of norms of violence among various ethnic groups. Wow, this is why we're seeing what we're seeing. The drag queens in the school, the promotion of sex in school, in elementary school. Wow, it's crazy. And you guys thought this was like a ground swelling of the common person putting this into the schools. No way. These are the people that are doing this. So, also proposed was implanting tiny electrodes deep within the brain for monitoring and controlling of violent targeted individuals. West had gotten tentative approval for a grant of $750,000 from the LEAA for Violence Center. The money was reportedly raised by alleged octopoid Dr. Earl Bryan. Reagan was so enthralled by the idea for the center that he included it in his January 11th State address. Reagan said that the center, quote, will explore all types of violent behavior, what causes it, and how it may be detected, prevented, controlled, and treated. So far as we know, West Violence Center was never activated. Yes, it was. It was activated in every hospital and every institute and every university. It was activated. Because of the unwanted attention from civil liberties groups, and in particular the Subcommittee on Constitutional Rights, which involved investigating the CIA mind control abuse, the LEAA changed its policy to exclude funding for psychosurgery, medical research, and behavior modification, including aversion therapy and chemotherapy. West was still seeking funding for the center in April of 1974. But with Watergate in the news, the mood among politicians was such that they did not want to take any chances with potentially unpopular funding proposals. So Senator Robert F. Kennedy lying dead on the floor. Let's see here. Wait, where was it? Okay. So Senator Robert F. Kennedy lying dead on the floor of the hotel kitchen. The clip-on tie of his bodyguard, Thane Caesar, can be seen near his right hand. Sirhan is taken into custody immediately after the shooting. So they're getting now into the mind-controlled assassins. Now, if you haven't heard about the different, they're not theories really. Um, the latest information within the last 10 years on who were responsible of killing Kennedy and Bobby. You should research that. Mainly, they were military police officers connected to the government. And we know that Oswald was working with the CIA at some point. Do the research on that. I'll come back later on tonight and we'll get into the mind controlled assassins, starting with Sirhan. Make sure you like, subscribe, share, hit all notification for future live streams and videos. If you want to support monetarily, you can support me at the links in the description. PayPal, Cash App, Patreon, Bitcoin. Stay safe, and just remember, everything you're seeing right now in front of you in society, on TV, policies, laws being changed, open borders, teaching sex to children, transhumanism, transitioning children. This is all by design by the globalist families and the organizations that were backed by the CIA. This book breaks it down, going all the way to the 1950s. They wanted to control mankind, be able to alter their behavior. They wanted to be able to create Manchurian candidates, assassins, change the genetics of individuals, change the beliefs of individuals, and then depopulate the undesirables. This is what we're seeing in our society. We need to understand this. We need to accept that that's what's going on, and then work accordingly to try and expose it to the ones that are unwilling to see what is right in front of them. All right, guys. Catch you later. Bye.